Hello, 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 ladies, and welcome back to my channel. If you are one of my wonderful subscribers, and welcome if you're brand new. My name is JAKS. This channel is where I share my journey through infertility, IVF, adoption, parenting, and now pregnancy, all the while trying to give you some facts, trying to give you some knowledge so that you feel better about making decisions in your own journey. And this week is my 13-week update. During these updates, you know the jam. I go through the baby updates, the me updates, and the husband updates. If you are just joining and this is your first one, I'll put the playlist up there if you want to start from the very beginning. But let's jump in with baby updates. What's up with Beta Baby this week? First of all, they are growing. They are 3 times the weight of last week. Insane. They're about the size of a clownfish or a peach. Evidently, I really didn't know how big a clownfish was. Clownfish, I thought Nemo gave me wrong proportions, but evidently a clownfish is about that big. Baby's about 3.5 inches long. And this week, big things are happening. They're moving a lot. All their joints work. Let's see, practicing breathing. They're practicing swallowing. So all of those systems are starting to get up and running. And while they're still far from being born, a lot of the internal systems are starting to actually function, which is cool. And even though it's far too early for me to feel them moving, it is cool to pass that step knowing they are moving, and as soon as they get big enough, I will be able to feel it, and I'm really, really looking forward to that. On to mom updates. At the end of week 13, which is when I always film these, I always talk about the week that just happened, so week 13 is over. At the end of week 13, I was hovering around 147, which is around what we've been before, but it's not a decrease. You can see there's kind of this plateau going on over there, and that is good. That is kind of what we're looking for. That's how you stop a decline. First, you gotta plateau a little bit, then you can increase. So fine and happy with that, especially once I tell you what else has been going on this week. My waist is still measuring 29 inches, so about the same. Your uterus has been sitting down in your pelvic bone, and then eventually it gets too big, right? The baby may be this big, but your uterus is that big already. So eventually it can't fit into the pelvic bone anymore, and it comes up above it. And that's where it'll sit for the rest of the pregnancy. But that's why sometimes it feels like your bump appears overnight. It's just once it pops out of that space, it takes up way more space up in your abdomen, doesn't sit as low. It's also why you sometimes really, really need to pee all the time in the first trimester, and then at some point you get some relief and you can actually go more than an hour without peeing as you get towards the end of that, because as soon as it pops out of that pelvic bone, then your bladder can take up that space again. So the more you know. The big news of this week, of course, was right at the beginning. We had our 13-week appointment. If you're new here, the reason that is so big is because that was the point of loss of our second pregnancy. And so there was a lot of anxiety building up to that. And I have to say that the actual day was a little less than optimal. My office was running behind by 45 minutes. So I'm just sitting in the waiting room alone because COVID, for 45 minutes, just watching the time tick by past my appointment, and finally get called back, and they move pretty quickly. But you can see my doctor, who is normally dressed immaculately, by the way, she is so fancy all the time, which seems like an overdress for someone who's dealing with your queen bee. It's you can just wear jeans. This can be more casual. But she was in scrubs, so you could tell someone had a baby that day, and that's why they were running behind schedule, which I always try not to be too hostile about, because I'm oh, one day that might be me. So anyway, that's why they were running behind. Finally got back there, and I had been so nervous up until that point, and I got in the room. I don't know if it's because I like her so much and she's really calming or chill, but I kind of mellowed out until she pulled out the Doppler, and then I just stared at it really aggressively. She was probably very concerned. If you follow me on Instagram, you already saw that the baby has a heartbeat, has a nice strong heartbeat in the 170s, which is exactly what it should be for week 13. So it was just such a relief, and I got to record it because obviously the husband wasn't allowed in the room. So I recorded it for him, and then I also shared it on Instagram with you all. That that was a huge sigh of relief. With all these appointments, there's always kind of this nice, like, honeymoon period after those appointments where you're like, oh, the baby's fine. And then as you get farther and farther away, you're like, more time has passed, maybe something wrong. I don't know what gets wrong. And that builds anxiety for the next one. Yay, infertility for just causing that fun loop of emotions. But I'm really glad that went well. This is the farthest we've been, and everything indicates everything's fine. But I'm not gonna lie. After that appointment, things went a little downhill with my week. If you've been following, you know, week 10 was real bad with lots of throwing up. And then if that was like a 10 on the nausea scale, week 11 was like an 8 and week 12 was like a 7. And I really was hoping that downward curve would continue. And I don't know what happened in week 13, but it went straight back up to a 10. And the final straw was I had been having issues with driving, getting car sick essentially. It was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I got in the car to pick up Evangeline from daycare, and the husband always rides with me. And I turned out of our neighborhood, and I couldn't even make it off the street that leads to our neighborhood. I immediately pulled into our neighborhood the next turn, got out. Luckily, it was really cold. It's freezing here in the Midwest, yay. But that was really bracing, and I kind of went and leaned against the car, you know, towards the sidewalk and just took a minute. But I couldn't. I was going to throw up. I was literally just going to throw up trying to drive. And I was like, this is it. I'm done. Like, there's no point in toughing it out anymore. Honestly, I was getting really upset almost every day with how bad I was feeling and how debilitating it is. Luckily though, after my Doppler scan with my doctor, I did talk to her about my nausea and the levels it had gotten. And she kind of looked at me when I was describing like what happened in week 10. She's like, you know, you can like call us, right? And I was like, I really should have. I was not thinking all the way through. Should have definitely called you. But she's like, well, do you want meds now? And I was like, can you just put them on, not on call, but like, can you send over the script to my pharmacy? And then if I need them in the next week, fine. Like if it continues to go down, I'm cool. I'll tough it out. I don't care. But if I need them, like I'd love to have that on prescription. She's like, yes, of course. So she had done that. So that night, well, obviously, after getting out of the car, almost throwing up on the sidewalk, getting back in the car, having the husband drive me home, I said, can you please stop by the pharmacy and pick this up? And he did, because the next day was Thanksgiving. And I was like, I'll be damned if I spend Thanksgiving just laid out on the couch. I don't know. It was some mental, like, no in my mind. So I got my Zofran prescription, and that's a miracle drug. That's great. That works fabulously. It really brings my nausea down, and I used it during Thanksgiving. I have to say, it's not a cure-all. It didn't cure everything. I was spending 80% of my day nauseous and maybe 20% fine, and this reversed it. I spend 20% of my day right around meal times nauseous after eating, and then all of the in-between time is okay, which is just a huge weight off, you know? I can't even like really express, like that's such a big shift in like my feeling. It completely helped with my car sickness as well. I actually went on a road trip with my dad over the weekend as part of like an early Christmas present to him, and we drove to Paris, Missouri, which is some podunk town. There is nothing there. We were on a scavenger hunt. Don't go there. But we had a really great time, and we got to talk in the car for hours, and we made the best of going to this nothing town and exploring it. And it was just a really nice way to spend a day. And it was really nice. I can't imagine, I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't have Zofran on board to like help with the nausea. So that was really great. On to better things. Obviously, I think you can tell from the little intro clip, my bump is there, and it's just weird. I don't know, it's some weird mental thing to like have like physical proof of it. And even like the husband acknowledged, he's like, yeah, that's not, you know, you ate a big Thanksgiving meal. That's something else. And it's just kind of weird. I think that's the best way to describe it. I don't know if it's because body changes are weird, or it's like I've never gotten to that point in pregnancy, or what it is, but like having some proof of there's a baby there besides a pregnancy test, and you just mentally being like, yeah, there's a baby there, is kind of cool and weird. So I'm not like mad about it. It's just a very weird to like look down and be like, oh yeah, whoa, that's there. And I forget all the time. And final update, I definitely took advantage of Black Friday to get a bunch of stuff for Beta Baby. Since it is baby number 2, we don't need as much, but there are definitely some car seats being the biggest item, and I got them each $100 off and made me very happy. But we also put together kind of a Christmas wish list for Evangeline because we need to get her room ready. Obviously, she'll be kicked out of the nursery eventually, so we are trying to get her room set up and start doing some of the transition things we need to do to make sure when baby gets here it's easier. Things like weaning her off pacifiers. We have very minimal use right now, but we want a good few months where she hasn't even seen a pacifier before Beta Baby comes. I hear mixed reviews about older kids like reverting back to passies, but we're gonna try it. But along that same vein, I have been trying to research like ways to get little kids ready for like a new baby. There's a lot of good material for like older kids who have a little bit more cognitive ability, but I'm really worried this is gonna be a rough and bumpy ride since she doesn't have any concept of, this thing's going to happen tomorrow. And when we say baby, she like thinks we mean her because obviously she's been our baby and she's 1, So if anyone has any good resources for introducing kids, 2 and under to a sibling, let me know. That would be really helpful. Because I have just stumbled across so many videos that are just horror stories of like kids throwing cars, little toy cars at their babies and like basically trying to smother them. And I'm like, oh gosh, this is way more intimidating than I thought. So any resources would be appreciated. And finally, the husband's update. I did ask him for a direct quote for this, and he says, nausea meds save lives. Which I'm going to interpret as, I'm in a way better mood. So on that note, let's bring week 13 to a close. Hope for better results, better moods in week 14. And until next time, ladies, keep on fighting.